Oh, banger.
Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
And just like that, we are back and getting set for UFC Vegas 81. Yusuf versus Barboza in the big-time main event coming up today. As always, one half of your host duo, Craig Allen, X, and Instagram at CraigAllenFNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, MattAllenFNP. My funniest thing about them switching the name to X and switching the logo on their building and everything, all the news articles that you read that quote tweets, and I'm not just talking MMA media, it's just media in general. It could be Fox, it could be CBC, it could be anything. They always put X, formerly known as Twitter. But if you look at the slug, it's still www.twitter.com.
Like, the artist formerly known as Prince.
They couldn't get rid of that. But listen, we have a big time fight card coming up this weekend, and obviously we lost everybody's favorite fight. I said, listen, I'm going to throw it down in the comments below. You're going to be able to see. You can rewatch the original video. You can watch the second video. Daniel Lacerda da Silva taking on Edgar Chairez. That fight is off. Their catch weight of 130 pounds. They both weighed in successfully, but it was scratched due to a medical issue. So that is the little bit of news and notes that we have. And obviously some of these fights, some interesting talking points on them for sure. But I got to hit up that chat already. Todd's there, Ryan Netmaker, AG, Branch Above, Eric Cote, Maya versus Araujo co-main event. What a time to be alive. I always reference, like, remember Jake Collier, Chase Sherman. Remember when Gaji Omar Gadria fought Caio Borralho.
They love throwing unranked heavyweights in that co-main event slot.
Middleweight as well. But MMA Millionaire, we've got Clay and C. Shane as well. Love these early cards. Clay with the super chat. Thanks for convincing me to hedge with the Demopolis lads. I wouldn't have scored it for her, but that's why I hedge. Huzzah. Matt, my wife has a shirt that says Huzzah on the front. Honestly, I convinced her to buy it. I think she's happy that she did. But we went to go see the Henderson Silver Knights. Their parent club, the NHL team. They won the cup, the Stanley Cup, but the Henderson Silver Knights, their mascot is the town crier. The town crier. Like one way back in the medieval days. And he says huzzah. So that's my tie into the super chat from Clay.
I'm excited for the card this week. I really am. I know it doesn't have a lot of star value to it maybe, but there are a lot of recognizable names scattered up and down this whole entire card. Terrance McKinney's buried on the prelims. I know he might not have been the Prince that was once promised, the hyped up prospect he was, but he still puts on pretty exciting fights the last time I checked. And this main event's a fun one, right? Because Edson Barboza has had so many opportunities at the top of 155 and 145. You wonder, is he ever going to be able to break through at 145 and really be able to get maybe a title shot? It's kind of that half step too far, but you could see Edson Barboza being in a title eliminator, but he's got to beat Sadiq Yusuff if he wants to get to that point. And at 145, there's so many talented fighters up and down the rankings that you really need to go out there and look impressive time after time to really get one of those big time shots. And I think this is one of those fights that sets up both athletes just phenomenally for whatever comes next, because Sadiq Yusuff has a great resume, but he doesn't have a name as significant significant as an Edson Barboza on there. And if he's able to go out and beat Barboza, who really knows what's next?
You don't think Andre Feely and Alex Caceres are up on
Probably
that?
not Edson Barboza level.
All right, well, as you know, with Fight Night Picks, you toss us a like, we move forward through this card, we zip up and down, and then at the final, a little bit, we offer that final recap really quickly. Matt, you made the example earlier on that when we talk about the Topology votes, a little bit like our weekend update segment, well, that's kind of the end of the show when we recap it all. Scott B, what is going on? Anthony L had Demopoulos, got a free one there. You definitely did. That was a chintzy decision call, as they say. But Matt, this card starts off with 8-8 versus 12-8. It is Ashley Yoder taking on Emily Ducote. You look at the 5 on in for Ashley Yoder, 1-4. Emily Ducote, she's lost her last 2 matchups against good competition, Angela Hill and Lupita Godinez. For Ashley Yoder, even out of those 8 losses, you pick and choose some of the names. They're always against, top 15 or fringe top 15 fighters in this women's strawweight division.
Do you think this is a Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk in a steel cage type loser goes home fight?
I do feel like it could be a loser goes home fight. And you got a 35-year-old coming off a 2-year layoff for Ashley Yoder, a couple of shoulder surgeries while she was on the shelf. She's going to be on a reality TV show. That's exciting stuff right there. But Ashley Yoder, she can usually counter what her opponents do, usually. I mean, her grappling is probably her hallmark, but typically you see her on the retreat, striking for volume against a lot of her opponents. And with Emily Ducote, I really like her boxing. I said that on her way into the UFC. I thought that the leg kicks were pretty well a hallmark of her game. You look at the first fight against Jessica Penne, a teammate of Ashley Yoder, Ducote looked really good. And then you see Ducote her next time out take on Angela Hill, and she just couldn't put her foot on the gas pedal. And then against Lupita Godinez, her last time out, a relatively tight affair, but Ducote was outstruck against a fighter who I would think is deserving of a top 15 number in Godinez. But when you look at it for Ashley Yoder, again, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, can she get the fight down to the mat? And we were talking about their fight camps kind of coming into this one. Ducote, for her last fight, trained down at Alliance with Angela Hill, her last opponent, and Jenna Bishop and all of those women at that gym and in and around. Ashley Yoder, I mean, her out of Team Quest and Dan Henderson's athletics, but she trained for this fight with Angela Hill and a lot of those women.
It's an entertaining fight because both fighters are quite well-rounded, but they are on very different types of losing streaks, right? Like, I think Emily Ducote can go out there and get more wins against maybe not a ton of ranked fighters, but at least set herself up well to get to that position at some point throughout her career. Whereas for Yoder, she's made improvements, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, she is still very similar to the fighter that she has been throughout the years. She has the grappling in her back pocket. She's going to retreat and try to use some of that volume striking to her credit. I just don't know if it's going to be enough against Ducote, who does land good damaging shots on the inside, and I do think the judges are going to side with those over the more volume-heavy approach that Yoder brings into the cage. I know some fights you will see it where one fighter has like 89 significant strikes, the other one might have 50, and they'll give it to the one who has 89 even though they are more pitter-patter shots, but I think with Ducote, she's got a good clinch. I think that's going to help eliminate some of the offense of Yoder, and for those reasons, I do like Ducote in the match.
And it's tough to say good clinch, especially like, I know this was a big talking point at the start of the week. Ducote's got to close that distance, gain the range, and then bust up her opponent in this one. She's at a pretty big size disadvantage, height, reach-wise. And then the scary part about the fight, and I see it over there from Alejandro saying, I like Emily by knockout, sub, double chance. You look at the finishes that Emily Ducote has. She fought the former atomweight great over with Invicta, Alessia Zapatella. She was able to get a second-round doctor stoppage win. We remember the crazy head kick knockout over Danielle Taylor. And then before that, Janecia Moranjan back in 2019. So it has been a little bit. Catherine Paprocki ended up on The Ultimate Fighter, if I'm not mistaken, but I think she lost in her first fight. That was a few years ago now for old Paprocki. But when I do look at this one, Matt, the fans over on the Instagrams at Fight Night Picks, 69% going with Emily Ducote. And the reason why I say it's scary when you're trying to pick Emily Ducote to win by finish, can you imagine going up to your close friends and saying, hey, I'll pick a name. Hey, Tyler, guess what? I'm going with Emily Ducote. I'm going to put my hard-earned money on Emily Ducote. And Tyler goes, hey, what odds did you get Emily Ducote at? And you go, well, 4-1 odds. I mean, 2-fight losing streak, 12-8, Emily Ducote. She's got it. I have her to win this fight, but when you're going with Emily Ducote at minus 400, it just seems silly to me. I'd stay away from it if it was me.
I think it goes without saying. Like,
Okay.
I don't think we had to have that conversation at all.
With non-existent Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, don't drink and play with chainsaws. No duh. It doesn't really go together. Like, yeah, people know that. If you're watching our channel, you know, don't put your money on Ashley Yoder versus Emily Ducote. But we both have Emily as the prediction, though.
Tyler's saying Emily Ducote by knockout. I think
like Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton goes into business for himself.
agree with Clay, though. I mean, the hedge being Yoder, sub or bust, plus 600. We haven't seen a Yoder finish in a meaningful amount of time. But yeah, this is going to be a big time matchup. Matt, the next one, Chris Gutierrez taking on Alatengheili. Originally, last weekend, Chris Gutierrez was supposed to fight Montel Jackson. And this weekend, Alatengheili was supposed to fight Ronnie Yaya. Yaya out. So he went, I'll sign that deal to take on Chris Gutierrez. So obviously, you know, for Gutierrez, it was the start of last week, not this past week that went by, but the week before, where his fight fell out against Montel Jackson. So a little bit of a double weight cut.
How excited were we for that fight, Craig? Because that was very exciting.
We were amped. Now, you get this one, and it's still a good fight. And I know we kind of had a little bit of a skirmish there with Alatengheili, comparing him to Todd Helton. I don't think hitting an elevation changes contact for anybody. I think it's more power.
No. It does. I can guarantee you it does.
But
there have been studies.
The point being for this matchup, Matt, with Alatengheili, he's never out of a matchup. And some people kind of sat there in the comments and they scratched their head a little bit. And they said, well, Alatengheili, you guys are saying he's got this wrestling. Where's the wrestling? You saw it a lot on the regional scene, and in 6 fights in the UFC, it's been more defensive than it has been offensive, but it's always there in his back pocket, and he definitely has to maybe camouflage some of those big-time shots and find himself into a takedown.
And that's why this fight's so interesting, because, and I know we normally save the pick until after the little breakdown, I do have Gutierrez in this matchup, because I think his striking is much more complete, and I think he's going to be able to do it on the retreat, but Chris Gutierrez, if he has a massive hole in his game, is when he's not leading the dance, he can get caught up and kind of frozen on the back foot. And if he does that against Alatengheili, who throws with big power and can crash forward into some of those takedown attempts, it could be a really bad fight for Chris Gutierrez. But I still think the takedown defense is going to hold up. And if it is able to hold up, then he's going to force out a lot of those big looping shots from a guy like Alatengheili. And if they land, great, they're going to do a lot of damage. But if he is just forced to wing big hooks from the middle of the cage against a guy like Gutierrez, I don't care how low you are on Chris Gutierrez, you still think he can probably go out there and beat a guy with a game plan like that. So I think we're probably going to see the leg kicks because it is Chris Gutierrez after all, and they are a hallmark of his game. But once he's able to set up the leg kicks, use his boxing combinations, I think we do know how devastating of a striker he can be. And for those reasons, he's just a lot more complete with the striking package, and that's why I like him in this fight.
And Gutierrez being a guy that tends to throw above a dozen leg kicks per round, it lends credence to a big-time outing, especially where he's able to blend that in with his boxing. He opened a minus 175. He's a minus 287 on best fight odds right now. Is Gutierrez as the favorite in this one? At Fight Night Picks for the total votes, 84% going with Gutierrez to get the win. And I have him in this one. I'll be eager to see if either one of these guys, I know it's been more of a talking point for me this year as it's gone on, but who's going to target the body out of these two? Because, again, Joaquin Buckley last weekend, it was something that I mentioned. It was something that you saw. We'll see how it's able to play out in this one. But I think this is definitely a fun fight at bantamweight between these two guys.
It's a strange fight, though, for this reason. If Gutierrez wins, what do you do with him next? Like, do you put him back into the fighting guys in the top 15 category? Because beating Alatengheili, there's probably more than top 15 guys who could do that, right? I think that's fair to say. So for Gutierrez, I just don't know what he earns himself with a win here. It does get him back on track, but bantamweight's such a big division right now that there's a lot of really competitive fights you could put him in.
I just pulled up Topology to see who doesn't have a matchup.
Kyler Murray fight would be fun.
He's going to have to fight that little quarterback for the Cardinals.
Kyler Phillips fight, sorry. Not
Kyler Phillips fight wouldn't be too bad. Hot Dogs is tuning in. MMA Effer wants to know Yanez, it's Yanez, and we'll get to that one. Or Martinez. Yanez point spread is wild. All right, both of us going with Gutierrez there. Make sure you toss a like. Irina Alekseeva taking on Melissa Dixon. I'd be eager to know who people have in this matchup because at the start of the week, we kind of laid it out. If you watched Irina Alekseeva fights on the way-in, whether it was with Bellator, missing weight at flyweight, whether it was in the UFC, missing weight at bantamweight, whether it was over across the pond somewhere in Europe or Eurasia, Alekseeva was one of those one-hit, one-kill type of fighters. Really powerful strikes from odd angles to get the takedown. You know her Sambo background. She's been a champion in Sambo, champion in hand-to-hand combat, and it shows when she fights. And I think of some of those Army hand-to-hand combat type of fighters, like the top one marquee that pops off in my head is Max Grecian. She doesn't fight like Max Grecian at all. She really does mix her martial arts well. But she's one of those fighters in that Christos Yago zone where we burn hot in the first round, and once it's burnt in the first round, there's not a lot left in the second, to where when I've watched both of these women fight, I think Alekseeva's got that really sharp sword. I think Melissa Dixon's got a really sharp piece of paper, and if she's able to go out there, wear on her opponent, take down Alekseeva, find herself on top. Dixon's really heavy on top. Her ground and pound is very, very good. If you went back and you watched her fights on the regional scene on the way up, she was due for an Aris FC title fight against Gisele Mohea at the start of this year. Missed it because she missed weight. But both women in this one, Matt, they came in, they made the weight, so it's a slow golf clap.
I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about like a Deadliest Warrior episode where it's a sword versus a very sharp piece of paper. It'd be kind of a lame episode, but I do understand
You know
why
what I
you were
mean?
getting
Death
at
by
it.
1,000 cuts.
For Alekseeva, I'm going to be really interested to see how she does facing a higher level of competition as she progresses throughout her career, because it is an aim big, miss big kind of a style, right? And I do mean that in terms of not only her cardio, but the striking that she brings into the cage as well. It's a lot of wild blitzes, and yes, when they land, they're great, but against high-level strikers who are going to be much more technical than her, they should be able to counter and use their movement to get away from some of the more aggressive strikes of an Alekseeva. I like her in this matchup because I do think she has the answers to whatever Dixon does well. Dixon has great top pressure. She brings really good wrestling into the cage. I don't know if Alekseeva is the type of grappler you want to be trying those parts of your game against, and if they are forced to strike on the feet, maybe Dixon can do a good enough job with her clinch work to put out some of the fire of an Alekseeva. But I think if Irina is able to just strike with a lot of that big power and throw those blitzes, I think it's going to be enough to win her rounds. But again, I don't want to see 15 minutes of pure striking out of these two. I think the grappling is going to be fun, seeing the top pressure of a Dixon trying to play out against someone who is so scrappy off their back against Alekseeva, but I just don't know if either one of these fighters is going to be going out there winning a lot of ranked fights on the feet.
And that's the thing. I mean, for Dixon, you know her for the IMMAF lineage. She wasn't able to get it done against Jasmine Favaro back in 2019 at the European Championships. That was in the finals. But as a pro, undefeated, wins over Josie Blabber, who was 1-1. Daniela Mistelli, who was quipped as the housewife as the nickname. She had like the rash guard shirt on. She took on Mafaida Carmona. She was able to get the decision win there. If you went back and watched that with Golden Ticket Fight Promotions, who I think the Boshrats fought with at least at one point. In that one, she gets a takedown really early. She wears out the entire fight. The fight against Rizian Zuak. Zuak has success in the striking, but Dixon does on top. And then against Daria Zalezhnikova, who's supposed to be on this card. Zalezhnikova busts her up on the feet at the start, and then at the very end of the round, Dixon gets it down. She's landing the ground and pound. The referee steps in, and you think, oh, it's the end of the round, right? No, it's the end of the fight. So a big win for Dixon there. AG saying, where do people think Alekseeva doesn't have cardio? She's won multiple decisions. All right, AG, you want to go into it? Let's go into it, bud. Alekseeva's fight where she took on... It was her last one with Bellator. Stephanie Page wins the first round. Second round, I believe that she lost. Third round, she definitely lost. The commentary was all over her missing weight in that fight and all over how bad her cardio was. Commentary thought that Page won. I thought Page won the fight against Lilia Kazak. You have Alekseeva going out, winning the first round, and then getting manhandled as it goes on. So if you watch at least those two, that they did show that the cardio wasn't all that great. I do have Alekseeva in this one. I think her striking can actually be enough to
also,
pull away
don't
from
put
Dixon.
money on this fight either. You guys are too smart for that.
No, unranked ladies at the bantamweight. Yeah, it's tough. All right, we move into the next one, Matt. Brendon Marotte coming in on incredibly short notice, about a week's notice, 6 days, to take on Terrance McKinney. And when I saw that this fight was announced, Brendon Marotte was one of those guys. It's just a name that kind of pops off. You know him from fighting with the guys at New England Cartel, whether it be with CES or Combat Zone, his teammates' promotion being Calvin Cater. He's been able to do the damn thing. A shiny record at 8-1. The one loss to Adil Benjelani, or Adley, and that's, or sorry, it wasn't Adil Benjelani, it was Adley Edwards. See how you can mix up a couple of letters in a first name and it screws you right up. But again, originally this fight was supposed to be McKinney versus Chris Duncan. I think that would have been a fun fight for sure. But when you do look at this one, I mean, McKinney, he's got the wrestling in his back pocket if he were to use it. I think he could easily get a win over Brendon Marotte.
I doubt he does, though. Like, I think Terrance McKinney is what Terrance McKinney is. I know that's a weird thing to say, but he's going to get into some of these wild fights, and he's going to win some, he's going to lose some. I know the wrestling is there, but at this point in his career, I don't think Terrance McKinney's going to come out just shooting double leg takedowns like he's Chael Sonnen in 2011. He has that, and maybe at some point he will get to the point where he blends those skill sets together. But
there are fights where he's done that.
I know, but I just think Terrance McKinney, especially in a matchup like this against a UFC newcomer, where McKinney has been counted out throughout a large portion of these more recent fights, I think he's going to try to look impressive in this fight. I really do.
Counted out in what fights? He was more than a 4-1 favorite his last time out.
I understand.
When he took on Mike Breeden.
How good do you think Mike Breeden is, Craig? You couldn't say the sentence without keeping a straight face.
The reason why Mike Breeden lost the fight against Terrance McKinney was the body shots, the kicks, and the overall pressure of McKinney. When you look at a guy like Brendon Marotte,
the things that I think he's going to use
strongest skills is boxing. Do you want to have a friendly wager in front of the people out here?
What are you getting at?
I bet you, and it counts as 2 wins for me.
No, because I'm winning, and I don't care about this.
You're up by 1.
I know.
You're up by 1.
Because you were ahead by a lot.
I bet you 2-1 that Terrance McKinney gets a takedown in the first round against Brendon Marotte.
No. I think he can get one in the first round. I just don't think Terrance McKinney is ever going to fight like a champ. Like, we talk about Terrance McKinney's wrestling every time we do these videos, but Terrance McKinney never fights like somebody who uses wrestling as, like, the #1 skill set. He's going to set it up using the pressure. He's going to set it up using the striking. And if he has to use the wrestling, he will resort to it. I think he can use it, and I think he can use it in this matchup. But I just don't think Terrance McKinney in his wrestling is that #1 skill set that we should bring up all the time.
I think he's going to go for the wrestling. I think Terrance McKinney gets a win.
I think he's going to win this matchup. Again, this is another one of those fights, though, where does Terrance McKinney go after this? He has way too big of a name, and he's pretty far down in the division at this point, so you just don't really know where to put him in there with.
No, it really is a weird fight. Again, and you have to consider it in this one. Brendon Marotte taking it on 6 days' notice, up a weight class because he is a featherweight. He's definitely progressed a lot with his boxing, has Brendon Marotte. But again, the reason why I really bring it up with the wrestling, you've seen him against Dan Dubuque struggle a little bit as that fight went on, and he said it himself in an interview that he did with The Room, Stephen Domenico, that, he had a respiratory infection in that one. But if Lionel Young, even though you win by rear naked choke and you're able to reverse yourself out of it, if Lionel Young can take you down easily at the start of a fight at 11-20, then I think Terrance McKinney can do it, and I see him going out there and doing it. So both of us in this one with Terrance McKinney. We move forward, Matt, into a fight that, listen, this should be on a poster. I think people can rally around this one. Former 2-time Muay Thai world champ.
I should go to a friend's house and he has this fight on a poster.
Ugh. You put your shoes back on and you walk
you leave
into the cold winter night. But, Matt, Tainara Lisboa is taking on Javina Oliveira. And Javina could win. I don't think she's very good.
That's the thing about Oliveira. What she does bring into the cage is an insane level of aggressiveness, and it does work a lot. Like, I thought about this a lot when we talked about the Alekseeva fight earlier on the card, and I thought about, because her nickname's Russian Ronda, right? Why was Ronda so successful on the feet in the earlier goings of her MMA career? She was insanely aggressive and threw very heavy shots, and those things can carry you quite far when you're not afraid of the power coming back your way. And for Oliveira, maybe she is able to go in there and throw so many blitzes, really catch the eyes of the judges, and land enough damaging shots to where, okay, she goes out there and wins a decision. I don't know if she has, the cardio to keep up that kind of a game plan consistently throughout 15 minutes, and if she can stay just, I don't know, mistake-free for long enough to not get caught on the ground, to not get caught by a shot. Because the thing about Oliveira is, with a style like that is so aggression-heavy, you leave that many openings for your opponent to duck underneath, shoot for a takedown, to just be more technical than you on the back foot. And that's the one thing that stood out to me so much about Oliveira on that regional fight tape. It's a lot of forward pressure, and it's a lot of moving in a straight line forwards and backwards. And I think we do have a big enough sample size to know that at the UFC level, that doesn't tend to work out all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, combined opponent record for Oliveira, and again, they both didn't fight really anybody on the regional scene. There were a couple there, and obviously in the loss for Lisboa, she lost against everybody's favorite featherweight, Norma Dumont, earlier on in her career, and she obviously fought in Muay Thai, Valentina Shevchenko. I guess that might not be that obvious. I shouldn't say it that way. But for Oliveira, 9-8 the combined opponent record. Her last opponent was 8-5 on a 20-fight losing streak between boxing and MMA. And we mentioned some of the names. Chris Cyborg and Amanda Serrano were two of the boxers that she had fought and lost to recently. But to me, yeah, I mean, with Oliveira, I got to see it against somebody who's half decent. I actually think that Lisboa is not that bad. And I think by the end of, or the middle of next year, I bet you that Lisboa has a number next to her name, considering if Chelsea Chandler can beat Yulia Stoliarenko in one fight up a weight class, she gets the number 15 spot.
I agree with what you're saying if she wins this fight.
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
I just think if Oliveira went out there and won this fight, I don't think this would be one of the great upsets of our time or anything. And it would make me change my opinion of Oliveira moving forward. We talk about this every single week about how there's always a prospect. You look at the resume, it's not that great. They were beating people the way that they were supposed to beat them. They go to the UFC, you probably don't have the highest opinion of them. And then they start beating people at the UFC level the same way they were beating people on the regional scene. So maybe Oliveira can transfer those skills up quite a few, but I do have Lisboa in the matchup.
AG, yep, stay far away. I definitely would. We will move. Oh, you know what? Let's have a look and see what the fans are thinking on this one. At Fight Night Picks, they're close. Yeah, 55% going with Tainara, Lisboa. The other 45% going with Havina, Oliveira. John, that's just aggressive. But she does like to wear the Wonder Woman kit, does Havina Oliveira. We move into our next matchup.
I think this fight's way better than it is. I do. Just Darren Elkins to me is like Jeff Green. I like Jeff Green a lot. Jeff Green still dunks on people. He's old. He's past his prime.
Yeah,
but he still kind of looks like the guy that he was every now and then.
He's the picture of consistency, and he's usually always healthy. Darren Elkins coming into this fight
Jeff
after
Green's torn his Achilles.
A torn MCL, a torn meniscus, and a broken fibula did Darren Elkins succumb to in his last matchup against JSP, where he got thoroughly outclassed. And you think of the JSP fight, he's got to win. And then after that, the sandwich of losses where he gets spinning wheel kick knocked out by Cub Swanson, looking like he was on Mortal Kombat.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if I'd say Jeff Green's a picture of the guy's missed seasons due to injuries.
If Darren Elkins is coming back with that big of an injury and a layoff that's quite lengthy, you're taking on TJ Brown that fights like a banshee possessed. I do not see Darren Elkins winning this fight. Now,
if he can get past that hurdle, though.
No, I know the name is less than, but Darren Elkins, when he fought Derek Minner, I thought, geez, that's going to be a really competitive fight. It's kind of similar stylistically, right? Because Minner, going to use his grappling. He's going to use submission abilities. He's going to wear down his opponent. And Darren Elkins went reverse Uno card and did that to Minner in that matchup. So for me, when I watch a guy like Darren Elkins, he can do that, and he's put a pace on so many of these up-and-comers. I know this isn't a great example of an up-and-comer, but even think back to his somewhat recent win when he was able to go out there and beat Tristan Connolly. Like, Darren Elkins can put it on from the time he's 25 to now at 39. But yeah, for me, I do like TJ Brown in the fight.
I just think for Darren Elkins, he needs a very specific opponent to get wins over at this stage of his career. I do agree with you. Like, a prospect who has a big question mark around their cardio, I know a pretty great opponent for them to go against, Darren Elkins, because if that guy can knock him out in the first round, then that prospect's probably pretty good. If that prospect can't knock him out in the first round, he could get ground and pounded for the next 10 minutes. So he is a fun litmus test, I think, for a lot of these guys on the way up because of the name that he still is. But I don't have him in this Brown fight. And I do think we are going to see Darren Elkins struggle off his back in this matchup, too.
Did you folks hear what I had to say? I said Darren Elkins, torn MCL, torn meniscus, broke his fibula in the JSP fight. That was the only, like I said that for Elkins. I threw it up there in the video throughout the week. So Elkins is coming off the leg injury that he sustained when he took on Jonathan Pierce. That fight against Pierce was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2022 in the spring. No, it was December 2022, so almost a year away for Darren.
The thing about Elkins is, normally at this stage of his career, when we do see him have just bad performances, it isn't him getting out-grappled, right? It's him getting hurt by big shots in the feet. We see him get rocked and then finish as a result. I think this is one of those weird fights because Elkins is much more of a top-heavy pressure kind of a wrestler, right? He really likes to press down on his opponent, sap their energy, and then go for more submissions. Off his back, he can be held down, though, and I could see this being one of those fights where he really struggles against the top pressure of Brown.
Brown's good in the scrambles, and he packs a punch with his shots, and he does throw really hard, which leaves TJ Brown open to get hit, and you've seen that against a lot of fighters.
That's why I say it's an exciting fight, just because I think TJ Brown's going to win. I think he's going to be able to get the fight into the positions he needs to get the dub, but Darren Elkins isn't just going to roll over. He's going to try to grapple. He's going to try to use that cardio and weaponize the pace, so for all those reasons, it's a really exciting fight to me, at least, but I do have TJ Brown.
All right, Matt, we move into Christian Rodriguez taking on Cameron Saaiman. Matt, there's a reason why we do a show at the start of the week. We filmed it on Canadian Thanksgiving Monday.
Shout out.
Here's a clip from the show on Monday. Christian Rodriguez's biggest talking point in this fight, not just is this a giant prospect versus prospect fight, it is. I don't have to ask a question. Christian Rodriguez is like Melissa Dixon, is like Irina Alekseeva, who are all on this card. Make the weight. Like, Rodriguez had fights at 155. at 150, at 145, at 140. He's missed weight quite a few times. He missed weight on Contender Series, and even though he got the win, Dana White was like, listen, there's going to be more opportunities. You got to make the weight more often. And that was the same episode that Jake Hadley missed weight, and they still signed him from Contender Series. So for Rodriguez, he missed weight his last time out, 137.5, and we're making all these comparisons, and we haven't been doing baseball or basketball.
Oh, don't worry, just pass it
very
on.
often. And I'm actually not in this one.
to.
Christian Rodriguez is in a bad category, though, to where you're the Kelvin Gastelum of the division. It's shit or get off the pot. Is it 135 or is it 145? Because he's not a giant guy at bantamweight here. Yeah, so you got to make the weight, and he shows up at 140.
This fight, to me, remember when Big Baby Miller could have fought Anthony Joshua, and it was supposed to be a really big deal, and it was a big opportunity for him, and that's why more people were disappointed than anything that he failed a drug test, so it's a little bit different. But you get the idea. Just a big matchup people were excited for, and then one half of it isn't able to show up. They're going to force Christian Rodriguez to move up in weight, I'd imagine.
Like our next fight is Michel Pereira, Andre Petroski. Pereira's up at middleweight.
And the reason I say that is because this isn't like Christian Rodriguez's last fight. And I know his last fight was still against a pretty high-level prospect, but this is the fight that's really supposed to set him up if he could have gone out and beat Cameron Saaiman, right?
And he can.
He still can, don't get me wrong. But it was the first one, oh my goodness, you're this good? Well, then go out there and prove it to us. When you miss weight by as much as he did, I think it does leave a very bad taste in not only the fans' mouths, in upper management. Like, you couldn't imagine Dana White, Sean Shelby, whoever is very happy about him missing weight by this much, because this was a very exciting fight that I know a lot of people were looking forward to.
Yeah, I don't know if John Schneider made the decision on this one, but we'll see what happens. The thing that I don't get about this is you're Cameron Saaiman, you get matched up against another great big prospect, Christian Rodriguez, he's got all the shine. The thing that I don't understand is, like, putting this fight together on this card makes zero sense. Let's say Christian Rodriguez in a hypothetical world came in, he weighed 135. All right, we're not even talking about the weight. He fought on a pay-per-view main card his last time out, and now he's fighting in an Apex fight card. You're the Golden Goose beating their big prospect. Here's an Apex card fight in front of tens of people. Maybe if Tom Brady's there, you get eyeballs on him.
There's still cameras that are broadcasting to ESPN.
Yeah.
But we're acting like 5 people are watching this and only the people inside. This is still a big time fight on a main card. It might not be the biggest card in the world, but where else are they going to push Christian Rodriguez, the co-main event of a pay-per-view? Like, he's not the A side yet. He beat an A side, and now people are looking for him to be that next prospect.
Put him in
if you beat Cameron Saaiman, then you can become that next big prospect. But nobody's buying tickets for Christian Rodriguez yet. I don't know who you're arguing against right now.
Put him in a city that's got people that are going to sit in the stands instead of 10 people.
Okay, but Edson Barboza is one of the greatest and most exciting fighters of all time. He's being placed in the exact same position. That's just an argument against Apex cards, not the matchup itself.
Yeah, I hate Apex cards.
But everybody agrees with that.
I hate
It has nothing to do with this matchup.
There's a lot of people that like Apex cards.
No, a lot of people who all work for the UFC and save money on it. Not a single fan watching says, I like Apex cards.
I bet you somebody fills up that chat right now and says, I really like the Apex cards.
One person out of the vast majority doesn't change my mind about stuff. You love to be like, oh, the one exception. I don't care.
I bet it happens. Matt, in this fight, start of the week, you had Christian Rodriguez, I had Cameron Saaiman. I still have Cameron Saaiman in the matchup.
I'm switching the pick when you miss weight by that much.
There's 2, there's 3.
Wow, Craig,
there's a lot of people that like there's a lot of people that like Apex cards.
All 3 people out of the millions who watch this. Exactly. You're right, Craig. You're right. I have Cameron Saaiman, but this is a really odd fight, and I don't know what this fight does for either guy still. Like, there is that, oh, by the way, with Christian Rodriguez, so let's say he does go out there and gets a finish win, and everybody's really excited. Do they still push him at this weight division, or is this a fight where, okay, a win keeps him at the weight class, a loss makes him move up, or does he just move up no matter what? Because I'm a firm believer that Christian Rodriguez should have to fight a weight class above.
There's about 30 people that like Apex cards.
You're arguing against nobody right now.
All right,
just because a few people put it in our chat because you said they wouldn't. It's called trolling.
Both of us with Cameron Saaiman in the matchup. And then we get into Michel Pereira taking on Andre Petroski. The biggest clash of styles that I think you're going to find on this card. Because for Michel Pereira, we've seen those fight IQ lapses. We've seen the weight misses, the illegal knee against Diego Sanchez. And of course, I mean, we've also seen better performances where he's been able to mix in some of his wrestling. I think of that Zalima Medaya fight. You think of the fights that he kind of played around on the outside. Santiago Ponzinibbio, that's a really good example. The other one that Pereira was able to have was against Chaos Williams, and it was a little bit of a stinker of a matchup. But if you do look at this one between Pereira and Andre Petroski, Petroski throws a a lot of big-time power shots from minute 1 to minute 15, and he really likes to go out there. Fender Jazz tuning in and is excited about this fight. So when you do consider this one, Matt, I actually had a hard time picking the fight.
So did I.
And we'll look at the odds just to see where they're at, because I get a couple windows open with best fight odds. There it is up at the top. Michel Pereira open -150, -200. So he's a pretty big favorite.
I don't like, even though I do have Michel Pereira in this matchup as the prediction, I don't like where the odds are for this reason. I know Petroski will go out there and throw big power hooks, but if he makes this fight boring, he has a pretty clear path to victory. Like, just wrestle. And I know it's going to make him tired, but it's also going to help him avoid some of the bigger shots of a Pereira. And I don't know what the biggest skill gap between these guys is, other than the speed for Michel. Like, I don't think Petroski has the speed that can match him on the outside. He might be able to eliminate some of that with the clinch in pursuit of the takedown, because I don't think it's going to be a case of, oh, Petroski's like 9 of 10 first takedown attempts. I think he's going to have to work for them quite a bit, especially because of the movement from a guy like Michel Pereira in this matchup. But I think the speed is the big difference maker between these two guys. And if Michel can keep it in the middle of the cage, I think he's going to be able to land 2, 3, 4 shots for every one that Petroski's able to land. So Andre has a great chance to win this fight if he fights a defensively sound matchup. I just don't know if I'm really confident in him to do that for all 15 minutes.
MMA Millionaire. I'll take Andre. Michel always loses my money. Michel loses your money. Michel? I think you lose your money. And Michel Pereira in the UFC is 6-2, so pretty darn good record there. But again, when you do look at a guy in Andre Petroski, he can win it with the wrestling. He surely can. Petroski, though, in those couple of losses that we've seen, he only has one on his pro record, but also in the Ultimate Fighter. Petroski, when he took on Brian Battle, wore himself out in the first round. Battle was able to overtake him in the second round. His loss against Canadian Aaron Jeffrey, it was the same. At Fight Night Picks in this one, it is 57% Pereira to 43% Petroski. So the fans think this one's pretty close, and it seems like the chat does too. Louis Bond, Canadian Alpha Sigma chat's talking MMA. Appreciate the super chat there for sure. But yeah, for me, I'm going with Michel Pereira in the matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised if the underdog got the win here either.
Do you know what I like about this fight? If Michel wins, there's a lot of really fun matchups for him at 185, because he has fought, maybe not all the ranked fighters, maybe not everybody at 170, but he's been in enough high-profile matchups with guys who do match up well stylistically with him, and I think at 185, there's a lot of other fights like that for him to take. Imagine like a Pereira versus a Brad Tavares even. Like, that'd be a pretty fun fight, I think. Tavares coming off that big win over Weidman his last time out. So I've got Michel in this matchup, and it's a really fun fight. But you know what? I only want Michel Pereira to fight guys who are going to stand there and throw with him a little bit, right? I don't think Michel's ever going to get to a title shot. I just don't know if he's that good of a pure striker. But I think he can have a lot of fight of the nights depending on who you put him in there with. And at 185, it's just a fresh batch of fighters that he can have good matchups with.
He's lost me money. He's 6-2 in the UFC? Really? Yes, he is. Matt, the next matchup, possible fight of the night. Listen, Brendan Fitzgerald put it out there on Twitter, and Adrian retweeted it and said, thanks for pronouncing my name the right way. Adrian Yanez taking on Jonathan Martinez. It's a victory lap there, but when you look at this fight, Matt, for Adrian, first UFC loss, his last time out, first round knockout against Rob Font, to the surprise of everybody. And now Yanez gets matched up with another top guy in this division in Jonathan Martinez. And maybe we're squeaking in and out and around the rankings in this one. But when you consider matchup between these two guys, they're some of the more dynamic strikers that you're going to find in the division. And I'm not talking about the Sterlings or the Piotr Jans, but when you watch Adrian Yanez fight, it is with that premier boxing. Now, this isn't going to sound as good based on his last performance. You look at the Rob Font fight, that's tough, right? It really is. But, in general, Yanez gets hit with some shots. We remember the fight against Randy Costa. Remember a little bit of it against Davey Grant, against Tony Kelly, where he was able to just spin around and get it done. But when you do look at a guy like Jonathan Martinez, does it in a very different way. MMA tinfoil hat, when you bring up Davey still in the Navy, Grant, Yanez beats him. And Grant beats Martinez. So who's going to win it? I'd really like to know who the fans have in this one. But for me, I have Jonathan Martinez. I think fighting out of southpaw, using a lot of his kicks, I think that can be the biggest difference maker for him here.
It's a really weird fight because I can easily tell you how both guys could win, and it's one of those fights that's so close it might not be when you look at the pure results. Like, Yanez could go out there and win by first round knockout. Martinez could probably do the exact same, and the result on a piece of paper, just reading, first round knockout loss for either guy, wouldn't say that it's such a competitive matchup, but I agree with you 100%. It's a 50-50 fight that really does come down to at what range can either guy get it, because if Yanez can get it more primarily in his boxing range, range. We have seen Martinez get uncomfortable with that range with some opponents. He doesn't have the best just pure boxing, but his kickboxing is phenomenal once he's able to implement the lower half of his body and really get those kicks involved. And I think the kicks are going to be the difference maker, because Yanez in a lot of these fights, it started out a little bit slow, download that game plan, and then start to pull away later. If Martinez can invest enough in the body and the leg attacks, I think it's going to make the fight a lot closer as it does go down the stretch, and I think it's going to make whatever boost Yanez is able to gain from his very high fight IQ just a little bit less, and I think that's going to help Jonathan Martinez make this a competitive matchup. I'm assuming this is going to be like a 29-28 close decision either way, just because both guys do have good cardio. They're both going to be able to land good damaging shots. Now, the durability of both guys, I think there are question marks, though, because we have seen Martinez get hit by shots and get dropped from them, no doubt. And with Yanez, with his first-round stoppage the last time out, listen, Rob Font's a really good fighter. You get knocked out by him in the first round and go on to become champ. I don't really look into it that much. I think it could be one of those losses where it ultimately becomes a great thing for him. You lose against your first big step up in competition, you go back to the drawing board, and you become a much more improved fighter as a result. But with saying all that, I'm on your side. I've also got Jonathan Martinez in this matchup because it's kind of funny, right? He almost had to do what Yanez is expected to do right now. He was that hyped up prospect, suffered some losses, and now he's trying to rebuild himself. Yanez is on that path currently.
Yeah, and Yanez, the loss to Rob Font, it is a tough look, but when you consider this one height-wise, reach-wise, both pretty close to one another, the kicker can usually dictate the distance, and that's what Martinez can be. But when you watch both these guys box, if Yanez is able to back up Jonathan Martinez, Martinez doesn't really have much off the back foot. He doesn't have much for boxing counters. He's not a big-time hook guy. He can leave himself out there to get hit. And you know with Yanez, he can work the body, he can work the head, and he has really, really good volume. So when you consider this one, Matt, 58% of the fans going with Martinez. They think this is a really close fight. This fight in general is a pick'em fight. And for me, again, with Martinez, I liken him at the start of the week to a guy like Charles Jourdain. But Charles can switch stance a little bit easier. And Charles, you know, when he's working from orthodox, it's a lot of the boxing up top, shell, and then he's backing up a little bit, switching over to southpaw, mixing in the kick to the leg, kick to the body. Martinez doesn't really complement his skills.
I think Martinez is better, honestly.
I don't.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just think Martinez is a lot more compact with his striking. Like, when he's going downhill, it's like a train, right? It's just going like this the whole time. Jourdain's throwing stuff that's so looping it leaves him open for the counter. And yes, the offense looks great, but I think it just sets him up very poorly defensively when he does fight high-level competition, whereas Martinez might get cracked by shots, but everything he's doing is a lot more efficient in terms of his movement, and that's why I like him in this fight against Yanez. I just think Adrian's going to be a little bit too looping with his more primary power shots, and if that is the case, Martinez can land counters down the middle.
For me, Martinez, for Matt, Martinez, we move into the co-main event of the evening, and we've touched on this in a lot of the fights on this card. It's aim big, miss big on one side. It's tighter defense and better volume on the other side. Jennifer Maia, former title challenger, she was counted out. You wouldn't believe it now. You would not believe. If I told you Marina Moroz was destined to beat Jennifer Maia, nobody would believe it.
Not.
But it was, and the fans really sided with Moroz. Maia was able to get the win there. Maia was also able to beat the former, if we're talking Golden Geese, Casey O'Neill. Her last time out, she gets the win over O'Neill. So a 2-fight win streak there. And with Viviane Araujo, I mean, both these women over 35, but Araujo, has she aged out of the division? She tends to lose second rounds. Can she come in with that aggressive game plan and maybe knock out Jennifer Maia? Well, that remains to be seen. But for me, I like Jennifer Maia in this fight. I don't have a lot to touch on in this. I just think Maia's got that really high, tight, almost tie guard, and then mixes in a lot of volume with her boxing. The clinch work for Maia is pretty darn good. The takedown defense is pretty good. She's a former Invicta champ going up against a former Pancrase champ that is Araujo. But where I was an Araujo believer for a really long time,
And then I saw her face.
I'm off of that. Yeah, I'm off of that.
You're a believer. I have a really hard time picking Araujo fights, and this is why. She's a fighter who does really well when she's able to get into her own rhythm, but there's a plethora of ways that you can break that rhythm up, be it with your forward movement, your own volume, switching down for takedown attempts, just anything that gets her out of that real steady kind of setup for a lot of her combinations. And with Araujo, if she's able to get into that rhythm, I think she can win this fight. It's just a matter of getting back into it time after time, exchange after exchange, and I don't know if that's going to be the case against somebody like Maia, who not only I think can have success in the open cage, cage, I think her takedown attempts and her own clinch work is going to be able to escape some of the offense of a Viviani, because I don't think Araujo is probably the bigger puncher out of these two if they do find themselves both landing really clean shots. I just don't know if she's going to be able to land enough over time in the same manner to go out there and maybe get a TKO or KO stoppage. So I do have Maia in this fight, but again, and I've said this for every single fight in the card, it seems, these are two fighters who are kind of in their own room in the division, right? 125 has been around for enough now to where there are sort of those OG contenders and then a lot of the new prospects making their way up. These are two of the last kind of original contenders, right? So a loss is going to set one back very far in the division, you'd imagine.
Imagine like getting a tour through somebody's house, you open a door into that room, you go, oh, Jennifer Maia, Viviani Araujo, co-main event. You shut that door.
And you do.
You go to the next
But you know
room.
what? Like, there's not a lot of fighters who are still from this era of the division who are outside of the title picture currently. Like, Andrade isn't really around anymore. She's had quite a few losses. The new contenders in the division are all very young. It's a different time at 125.
It is a different time. For me, I do have Jennifer Maia in the fight. For Viviani Araujo, if you really like her knockdown, knockout ability, the last time she had a credited knockdown in the UFC was her debut against Talita Bernardo, and the last time that she had a finish in any of her fights was 9 fights ago against Talita Bernardo. She's got knocked down herself since then against Andrea Lee. So again, both of us going with Maia. At Fight Night picks on this one, 67, 66 at change percent. Have Jennifer Maia to get the win, and that brings us to the main event. Now, the polls have been close all week. There's like, what, 2,500 votes in the YouTube community tab. They were 50-50, 52% right now going with Barboza in this fight.
Understandable.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you look at it for Yusuff, a long layoff. I mentioned it. He did an interview with UFC.com. E. Spencer Kite, fellow Canadian, on the West Coast. But he mentioned, did Yusuff, that he had the trouble with the L4, L5 vertebrae, and that was a part of the layoff. He's had a lot of injury woes throughout his UFC career. And for Yusuff, it's never really gotten going. You think of the fight against Arnold Allen, where he rallies back at the very end, but it's just not quite enough. He got dropped early in that fight.
I think Arnold Allen would beat Edson Barboza at this stage of his career.
You think of the fight that he had against Gabriel Benitez, where we're getting Raggedy Andy. Do you think of the fight against Andre Fili? Yusuff's gotten hit, but he tends to rally through all those bad spots. He comes back on the better side, and he's able to go out there and get the wins. And when you look at Yusuff his last time out, he decimated a short notice opponent, Don Shainis, as a minus 1,200 favorite.
Messed up.
Was Sadiq Yusuff. So
We didn't need that.
Yusuff gets that tough test, and the ultimate striker, Edson Barboza. I wouldn't anticipate either one of these guys go for the wrestling. Maybe Yusuff out of the two.
Edson
If
took down
anybody
Dan
did.
Hooker. Edson does have okay wrestling.
But I do think you're going to get a lot more striking than you are any wrestling in this. But as I said at the start of the week, what version of Barboza do we get? Do we get the world beater against Hooker, or against Billy Q with the finish his last time out? Or is it a fight like when he took on Giga Chikadze and he got stormed?
This is my big point about Edson Barboza, and it has always been my big point about Edson Barboza. His boxing sets up everything he does. And I know what you're going to say, but Matt, what about the kicks? Don't worry, I'm going to get to those. Edson Barboza's kicks help his opponents stay stationary. And then when they stay stationary, he can implement his boxing, get in the pocket, throw body hooks, and then throw shots to the head as well. And that really has been a lot of where the offense of his career comes from. I know the kicks are very flashy, but think about how many just knockdowns Edson has from his hands at this stage of his career. Not only the Burgos ones, he was hurting Dan Hooker with his hands. He's had a lot of success throughout his UFC tenure with the boxing aspect of his fighting styles as well. And I think he's going to do the same thing in this matchup against Sadiq Yusuff. I just don't know if at this stage of his career he can absorb the shots coming back this way if he does get into the pocket, because at kicking range, I think he is going to have success. He is still as fast as any fighter as you will ever see. Normally, speed is one of the first things that go from fighters, right? Like power you hold on to. That's why heavyweights can be quite old.
Maybe this is the weekend where it goes, though.
It could, but for Edson, to Edson's credit, there's only been 2 fighters that I can remember where you kind of expect their speed to fall apart. They still maintain it, and it's Vitor Belfort, oddly enough. I know he didn't have a good ending run to his career, but even after he got off the TRT, he was a really fast fighter with his hands. He would throw those really quick blitzes on the inside, and I know he didn't have the power to finish guys, but the speed was still there, and Edson Barboza is the other guy. He still does have phenomenal speed behind the shots that he's throwing. I just think he's going to eat one for all the offense he throws, and I don't know at this stage of his career if he can eat that one shot. Maybe he can, and he can go out there and put on a Shane Burgos-like performance, a Dan Hooker-like performance, and I'll look dumb. But Sadiq Yusuff checks leg kicks, and he's pretty good at it. So I think that's going to help him stay in the fight for a little bit longer, help his movement be good for a little bit longer. And he does have great power down the middle with his own boxing. So I think this is a fight of the night fight. This is going to be an incredible matchup. Both guys stylistically play into their opponent's hand. But I do have Sadiq Yusuff personally.
C. Vonba doesn't like the Cleveland Brown shirt. Buddy, I've been wearing brown stuff forever, pal. And when it does come down to this matchup, though, you look at a guy like Barboza. You mentioned how good he can be with the hands. I worry a little bit. Even you think of the crazy knee. Billy slumped over. It's a knockout win. It's the Barboza of old. But all of that fight until the knee.
Yeah, Dariush was lighting him up with the jab.
Billy Quarantilla was having really good success against Barboza. Barboza can get hit, especially with the boxing. When you look at a guy like Sadiq Yusuff, he gets hit a lot. And he doesn't deal the best with kicks in the upper half of the old bod when we're hitting the body and when we're hitting to the head. So, again, for me, I do like Edson Barboza in the matchup. We are split on this pick. But people, they're kind of all over the place with this one. 52%, as I said, going with Barboza in the poll here. 61% going with Yusuf over on our Instagram. And that big determiner over there in the YouTube community tab. Thousands of votes in it now. It's basically split. So, John Puffer is having a good time, enjoying the show. As you know, with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we'll stack that deck one more time. Make sure you check out the video that's coming up next weekend.
What a card do we have ahead of us?
Yeah, you got big old Makhachev taking on Volkanovski in the main event. Kamaru Usman on short notice as well. He's going to be taking on Khamzat Chimaev, so that's a big time fight right there. You toss a like for that. You toss a like on the way out. And apparently I just turned the video off to go to the staging part. But now we're back.
Do you know the only thing about the new main event that I'm not thrilled about? The only little negative I have. We were probably going to get Makhachev versus Volkanovski anyways, right? And the fact that we're going to get the fight, but maybe only at 90% of its full potential because of the short notice nature of Volkanovski is a little bit of a letdown. Because, listen, Volkanovski's probably going to beat most guys at 145. Islam's probably going to beat most guys at 155, although I thought Charles had a decent chance this time around. I just would have been really excited for a full camp rematch, that's all.
Jack saying surprised the 294 has gotten better. I think it's got worse. I wanted to see Oliveira rematch Makhachev, and I wanted to see Paulo Costa fight. Like, I get excited about Paulo Costa fights.
But you were on this for a bit. Kamaru Usman's one of the best welterweights of all time.
Yeah,
Dana White says it. The fact that we're getting one of the best fighters of all time moving up in weight to fight the supposed boogeyman is quite the storyline.
We saw him look. It's the stylistic matchup of, I think Chimaev at his age at 185 is going to be able to either defend takedowns and outstrike Kamaru Usman, and I don't think Usman's got it anymore.
You might be right, but still, you have arguably one of the greatest fighters ever moving up in weight to fight somebody who has looked indestructible. What is the issue with that, Matt? Like, there's nothing negative I can say about it.
I needed to see Paulo Costa. All right, Matt, on this card this weekend in the Apex, 8-8 versus 12-8. I'll go with 12-8, Emily Ducote in this one.
I've also got Ducote.
All right, Matt. Then we move into the next one, Gutierrez, Alatengheili. I'll go with Chris Gutierrez.
I think it's a closer fight than the odds would suggest, but I do have Gutierrez in this one.
All right, then we have Alekseeva taking on Dixon. Papa don't take no mess. Melissa Dixon, man.
I thought you froze there for a second.
I'm going with Irina Alekseeva.
So am I.
All right, then we have a big time matchup. McKinney taking on Marotte in the debut. I'm going with Terrance McKinney.
I've also got Terrance McKinney in this one.
All right, then we have Lisboa taking on Oliveira. I've got Lisboa.
So do I.
Then we have Elkins versus TJ Brown. I'm going with TJ Brown.
A fight that I'm too fired up for. I've got TJ Brown, though.
Christian Rodriguez came in overweight. Came in probably in shape, but came in overweight. Cameron Saaiman is a pick for me.
I'm switching the pick. I'm going with Cameron Saaiman after the weight miss.
A couple weekends in a row with the switch the pick. You got it right last weekend. Michel Pereira is taking on Andre Petroski.
Give me Michel.
You want to flip-flop? But yeah, I have Michel Pereira in this one.
It's just, there's a lot of question marks around how Pereira is going to look at 185 in the UFC against a guy as big as Petroski.
Because, yeah, Pereira's last fight at 185, he got TKO'd by Dusko Todorovic.
And Andre's a big dude. It's not like he's fighting another guy who, is one of those tweeners. Like, Petroski's a big dude. Yeah. It's not like he's fighting somebody his size.
Both of us with Michel Pereira in the aforementioned fight. Martinez, Yanez. Going Martinez.
I love this fight, but I've also got Martinez.
Co-main event of the evening. Matt, get the popcorn out. Break your dinner plans. Jennifer Maia is fighting Viviane Araujo. I'm going to go with Maia.
I'm also going to go with Maia.
All right. And then the main event. Imagine saying a guy who's 6 feet tall is stubby. Imagine saying he's stubby. Matt, main event. C. Vonba doesn't like the brown shirt. Sadiq Yusuff taking on Edson Barboza.
6 feet tall.
Split on this pick. For me, I'm going with Edson Barboza in the matchup, but a striker's paradise, a big time featherweight matchup, and for Sadiq Yusuff, a really good shot at kind of getting himself back into that picture of the top 15. I know he's already there. I know he's ranked higher than Barboza, but think about it. He hasn't fought in a year, and the last time he fought, he was a minus 1,200 favorite against a guy coming in on a week's notice up a weight class. Well, no, sorry. It was in the regular weight class. Being Don Shameless Shanus. It's been a long time since Yusuf's had a meaningful fight at featherweight's what I mean.
Definitely, but there's a lot of question marks surrounding both these guys at this weight class. For me personally, I don't know how Edson's going to be able to withstand some of the pressure and the shots at 145, but Sadiq doesn't have that one big name that you can really start to build kind of not hype off of, but you can start to build a run off of. If he goes out there and beats Edson Barboza, perfect. You can throw a bunch of highlights in a fight against, I don't know, Giga Chikadze next.
Bryce Mitchell.
There's a lot in it. Like, 145 is one of the best divisions in the UFC, if not the best division. Like, there's a ton of great fighters, and that's why we have so many 145, 155, 135 fight night main events. It's because the divisions are so darn good right now. I have Yusuf, but I do think this is going to be a fight of the night style fight, and if I say that, it means it's not going to be one-way traffic either way.
Both of us liking this matchup. We're split on the pick. Again, make sure you check out the videos that are coming up for next weekend. Oh boy, Volkanovski taking on Makhachev on short notice. That rematch, toss a like on your way out. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.